everybody, welcome back to yet another episode of our series Power People, which profiles the souls of the music industry. And today, on this very special episode, we have with us Sonam Kalra. We welcome you here today, ma'am.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on this very special episode, and it's always lovely to chat with you, Jaspreet.
Thank you so much. So, Sonam, ma'am, your Sufi gospel project, blends diverse traditions like Sufi gospel, Indian classical, Western classical, folk. When you first, envision it, what was the emotional need or, spiritual impulse that sparked it really?
So, thank you for being able to see everything that it encompasses to begin with.
Yeah.
And yes, there was an emotional and spiritual need. Just to take you back a little bit, I have studied Hindustani classical music, and when I first decided to create the Sufi Gospel Project, it was because my mother was very sick, and I kept finding myself drawn to gospel music as a form of solace, as a form of calling out to God, spirituality, healing. And I felt that I needed to heed that call. So I started learning gospel music, and then I also studied jazz. I had studied opera already, and
Hmm.
over once I'd learned gospel, I got invited to a lot of festivals, a lot of churches to sing across India, and that was very meaningful for me. And a lot of people would ask me why a Sikh girl, a girl who belongs to the Sikh religion, felt this need to sing gospel music, and why weren't you singing shabads or bhajans?
Yeah.
And I said to each of them, I thought it to be such an odd question because I said we should each be allowed to call out to God in whichever way feels right. And I continued to do so. And I think what really was the turning point for me was when I got invited to sing at the Dargah of Sufi Inayat Khan for the Urs of Sufi Inayat Khan. And I think at that moment, the the incredulousness, the special quality of what was happening really was something I couldn't miss. A Sikh girl singing typically Christian music, as it was called, gospel music, gets invited to a seemingly Islamic space to sing. And I really felt that it was my duty at the time to listen to what the universe was saying, and that there was more to what I should be saying, more to what I should be creating. And that's when I sort of really did quite a lot of deep diving into my soul, into listening to my inner voice. And I felt that I needed to do something that was befitting of this opportunity that was being granted to me by the universe. And so, at first, the Sufi Gospel Project was created from a place of intuition, of blending the many faiths together, just as I was doing already. I blended them together in what felt right to my ear, to my heart, to my soul. And once I presented it for the first time and I saw the kind of response it got, but more importantly, the kind of feeling I felt I wanted to delve deeper. And I started researching the poetry of poets across region, across religion, across time, across language. And I found that all of these mystics, male, female, across centuries, were all saying the same thing about inclusion, about equality, about a deep surrender to the divine, about a seamlessness of faith, and about an equality of all human beings.
So you have often, spoken about, as you were saying, that music as a bridge across, faiths and cultures.
Yeah.
In today's increasingly divided world, do you feel music still has the power to create, genuine dialogue, or has that space shrunk?
I think it's even more important now, Jasvi.
Mhm.
The narratives of divisiveness, of hate, of I, me, mine, of ego, of a lack of humanity and empathy and compassion that are being created everywhere, that are being spread everywhere. I find them to be really, really they're so damaging, and we can see those effects of the number of inhumane acts across the world, the cruelty across the world, the wars, the lack of, as again I said, empathy and compassion. And it sometimes makes me wonder if we're living in the medieval times again, because all of the things it means to be human just by virtue of the word human, humane, we have forgotten all of that. And so I think the only thing, and it's not, I don't believe that politics can change that. I think politics perhaps is responsible for that. But I think the only thing that can really get through to people is when you reach out to their inner core, to their soul, And only music has the strength to do that, right? Music can change the way you think without preaching at you, speaking at you, talking down to you. It really has to, this kind of change has to come from within. And music is really the truest, deepest art form which can touch you deep within and change you at the very cellular level, or at least make you think at the very cellular level that you need to change or to call to your inner humanity.
Yeah, that's very well said. So, you have, came up with a new song, the collaboration Chalya Moon. Tell
Chalya
us about
Moment.
that. Yeah.
So Chalya Moment, the search is really, it's really about what you just spoke about. It's about a seeker. Moment means believer. Moment means believer, seeker. So it is about a seeker who sets out to find a place, to find a world where the greatest religion is the religion of humanity.
Okay.
He says that I am so tired of these divisive labels that human beings put upon each other. I am not a Hindu, I am not a Muslim, I am a child of God. And in whichever house God resides, in whichever heart God resides, that is my place of worship. That is my Mecca. And he says, I want to find that place. I want to find that Mecca where people live like this. He says, I don't want to live in a place where people burn each other or harm each other in the name of religion or identity. I want to be fluid. I want to, flow from one form into the other. I don't want to live in a place where everything is so rigid. And he says, I don't understand why people ask this question of who you are, where do you belong, these labels, because you live in everyone. And so it's something I wrote in Punjabi. I wrote this a few years ago. I was very I think I was very upset by this whole narrative of divisiveness that had started even then. And it's something I wrote, and then I collaborated, and this felt even more special to me because I got to collaborate. I chose to collaborate very deliberately with an Iranian female visual artist.
Yeah.
Wanted the video to be an animation video. I remember a friend asked me, but why aren't you in the video? Most artists are in the video. Why aren't you singing? I said, because this is not about me. This is about something greater than me, bigger than me. I don't need to show up in the video. I need people to understand the message in the video. And so I was very lucky, like I said, to collaborate with an Iranian female visual artist. And to me, it was an act of sisterhood. Also, because Iranian women's voices are being suppressed, it was important for me to have this Iranian woman who could, through her art, raise her voice. Gopika Chofla, another Indian artist, came on board, who's a dear friend as well. She came on board to help me with the visuals. We did, of course, everything is well balanced when you have a man and a woman in it.
Yeah.
So it was co-produced by Saptak Chatterjee, who did the music with me. I wrote the lyrics, and really, this was a quiet call to everyone's humanity. It's a quiet call to everyone's humanity saying, can we live in a world without labels? Can we live in a world without borders? Can we live in a world where we are kinder to each other? Can we live in a world that is free from these narratives of divisiveness and hatred? Can we find that place? Together, let's find that place.
Yeah. That's great. So when you're composing or reinterpreting, a piece, how do you decide which musical, influences to weave in? Does the song dictate the form, or do you consciously design the blend?
So I think mostly for me, it starts always with the lyric.
Okay.
I think the words really have to move me. So whether I write those words, whether I find a text that I want to compose, it has to speak to me. And it mostly I find that I am drawn to themes of equality, of inclusion, of a deep spiritual surrender even. And when I say a deep spiritual surrender, sometimes it's just about having that incredible connection with God, but mostly even then the underlying factor is that God lies within all of us. So whether it was something I created like Al-Fath, where Baba Bulle Shah says, your temple, your shrine, your church, your mosque is not within the four walls of a building, but within the walls of your heart. And therefore in everyone, whether it was Al-Fath or whether it was Chalya Momin Makke, where I wrote, ਨਾ ਮੈਂ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਨਾ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਮੈਂ ਤੇ ਰੱਬ ਦਾ ਬੰਦਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਘਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੂੰ ਹੈ ਵਸਦਾ ਉਹੀ ਮੇਰਾ ਮੱਕਾ that I am not a Hindu, I am not a Muslim, I am a child of God, and in every house that you reside, in every heart that you reside, that is my place of worship. So whether it's something like this or even Man Manam, which I composed for Coke Studio, the verse that really touched me in Man Manam and was the reason I chose to compose it was when the poet writes, Isai Maryami Manam, Ahmade Hashmi Manam. The poet says, Mary's Christ am I, and I am Ahmad. I am of Ali. So he says, I am a child of every God. So I think these
So
things,
how was the experience working with Coke Studio?
oh, it was wonderful. I mean, I
Yes.
think we were in season 2 or
Okay.
season 3. I'm now forgetting because it was a while ago. But it was so special because I think for me it was extremely special because I had two songs I could choose from. One was an up-tempo Punjabi Alfat, which is a mix of Punjabi and Farsi. Or I could choose to do Manmanam. Coke Studio had liked both the songs that I'd sent them. But I think I chose to go with the more difficult one. I decided to go with a language that not many people understood. I chose to go with Farsi, Persian. I chose to go with a slower tempo song, whereas you know that automatically a faster tempo song will maybe get you more viewers, more listeners, a greater audience. I chose to do both these things, which was an act of courage on my part. And when I look back, I feel quite proud of the fact that I was brave enough to do that because I thought that I want to go with the song that perhaps is tougher, more challenging for me as an artist to understand that will this song, even though it's not understood by everyone, will it be able to touch people? So it was almost like a challenge that I put for myself, and honestly, it did. Until date, it's one of the songs that people really ask me to sing the most, and so that for me was further reiteration.
Can you sing two lines?
Right now, okay, right at the end.
Okay.
But I was saying, it's a further reiteration for me that music truly can transcend borders and boundaries.
Yeah.
So I think, as artists, we also have to challenge ourselves and ask ourselves these important questions. For me, or just be really, most of my art, and coming back to your question, most of my art is about telling the truth. It's about telling my truth. And my truth may be different from your truth, and each truth is just a fact. So one is not judging any truth in this
Yeah.
particular case. But my truth is a reflection of what my beliefs are, of who I am as a person, and what I am here to say through my music. You may decide that you want to be here as a musician to entertain people, and that's lovely. I am here, I believe, to touch your heart, to make you think a little bit, perhaps to be a musician with a message, as I've often been called. And I quite like that term. So I'm quite happy to own it.
That's great. So Sonam, as an independent artist, and as a genre blending music thing, often struggles with mainstream visibility and monetization. So
Yeah.
how have you navigated the business side of sustaining a project like the Sufi Gospel project while staying true to its artistic and spiritual goals?
I mean, I can't say that it's been easy. It's never easy. I mean, I think the life of an artist in general is not easy, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
if you're an artist who has something to say or wants to sort of stay true to your own beliefs, your own art form, and not follow trends, it is hard. You wake up many days with angst. You question yourself. You wonder if you're still relevant. You wonder if you should take the easier, more trodden path, or should you stick to your more difficult uphill path? So these are questions you face. These are challenges you face, and I've often thought about these things. But I think that in my case, I've always felt that if I tried to do something that wasn't me, it would just break my heart. It's not true to who I am. It's not true to my soul. And I really believe I'm here in this avatar, at least in this life, as Sonam, only once. So I have to try and do everything I can to stay true to that Sonam, that creature, that person that I am with these beliefs that I am. The business side of it, I have to say, I've been quite fortunate that it has resonated with people. Um,
Wow.
so it would be hard for me to tell you if it hadn't resonated with people how it would have been. It has resonated with people. I've been lucky to be invited, across 30 countries to different festivals, to platforms, to share the music. And perhaps it has resonated with people because I have been true. And I think that at some level, people do appreciate um, an artist who's true. They
On.
appreciate
Yeah.
an artist who's unique, because there is so much sameness. And with the advent of social media, there's been so many great artists we have found, but there has also been a lot of sameness. And so I think even more important right now, it is even more important right now to, and I would say this to any artist, is to be you, is to be unique and try and stick to your individuality. Because at this point, when there is such a huge Our brains are being filled all the time with information and music and art and thought, and it's a non-stop bombardment at this point. I think the only way you can stand out is by being you, and that would cut the clutter to some degree. And I think
Totally.
also, I mean, I would say that it also requires a certain amount of staying power and belief in what you
Yeah.
are saying. So I think I do have that to a large degree. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be saying what I'm saying.
Many of your performances, as you said, feel like conversations rather than concerts. How do you approach storytelling through your voice and stage presence so that the audiences feel the part of the performance, basically?
So I think music for me always has been about bearing my soul. It has been about telling my truth. Again, I come back to that. So I feel like I treat the audience generally, even from the first song onwards, like they are in that moment, they are mine. They are parts of my heart. They are my friends. They are my family. And so I talk to them in that honest, informal manner, in an all encompassing hug almost, I would say. I do not like to feel. And for me, it really, because the room, when I'm singing, it feels like I want to share the love of the poetry that I have. So there is love in the room. And I think when you give love, you get love. So that generally seems to happen. It is conversational. You're absolutely right. Because I do like to share how I chanced upon the poetry, how I created it, what it meant, and what about it meant so much to me. So I think in contextualizing it, people understand it a little bit better as well. And they're able to get a deeper insight, not just into the poetry, but into who you are. And it allows people, it sparks different feelings in different people. I remember at the end of one of my concerts, it was really lovely because this girl came to me and she said, Sonam, this is the first time I came for one of your concerts. And I came with a lot of questions, wondering what the Sufi Gospel Project would be all about. And she said, but I'm leaving today with a lot of answers and a lot to think about. And for me, that just felt like the greatest reward I could have had. Um, if I can make you think, if I can change the way you think, if I can make you question very rigid beliefs you might have, and that to me is enough. One note at a time, change the world.
Yeah, but Sonam, spiritual music often walks the line between, devotion and performance. How do you ensure, authenticity while also making it accessible to global
Sorry,
audiences?
would you repeat that? I lost a little bit of what you said.
So, Sonam, spiritual music often walks the line between, devotion and performance. How do you ensure the authenticity while also making it, accessible to global audiences?
Well, I mean, I think spiritual music is authentic in general because in order to sing spiritual music, you have to find a deep connection to your own authenticity, right? To your own true belief, to your own. You have to channel that moment for it to really touch people. You have to channel your higher self in many ways. There can be no clutter at the time. There can be, I mean, if you're posturing, then it's not going to feel that spiritual. So I think for me, at that point, one of the things I say as a prayer before we get onto stage, I remind all my accompanists and myself, I said, please remember that the music is not here because of the greatness of you. You are here today to be able to share the music because of the greatness of that which is greater than you, the music, the spirituality, the ibadat of it is greater than you. So that, I think, one of the things you have to do, at least I do, is to drop all ego in order to approach the music. Even if I'm just composing, there is no I at that point. There is only a greater you, or a greater beloved that you create for. So for me, music really is ibadat. Performance, as I said, it never feels like performance for me. It feels not like I'm acting, I'm performing. It feels like I am encompassing at the time the audience with me, carrying them with me on a journey. And the weight of that certainly is of great importance to me when I'm on stage, the weight of wanting to carry this audience with me, of lifting them together. But it's also what is the most exhilarating thing. So I think for me, it's easy to stay authentic because I'm not trying to be anyone else. I mean, I think it's
Yeah,
pretty clear if I wanted to be someone else, I wouldn't have created the Sufi Gospel Project. I would have just done the Sufi Project.
definitely. So let's come on, collaborations.
Yeah.
Collaborations basically is the central to your practice. So what's one surprising lesson, you have learned from working with musicians outside your tradition, something that, changed your perspective on sound? And tell me about your favorite collaboration till now.
You're absolutely right. I love collaborations. Most of my work, all of my music is really through a collaborative process, even if it's with my ensemble. And I think one of the greatest lessons I've learned through collaboration is that your teachers are everywhere, your gurus are everywhere. Everyone you create a piece of music with, everyone you have a conversation with, everyone you reach out to say, listen, I'm struggling with this line, can you help me? They all are teaching you. So it's wonderful to know that you can constantly be a student and you can constantly learn by listening. And I mean, by virtue of being a Sikh, by the way, you know that the word Sikh means student. So I am a Sikh. And so it's great to know that I can be a student for eternity in my life. So the greatest thing about collaboration is keeping your heart open, your mind open, and learning from everyone that you meet. And I absolutely love that about collaboration. I love that you can it allows you to be playful, it allows you to be
Yeah.
childlike in many ways, because you can break all the norms and say, okay, let's just try it and see how it sounds. It allows I think one of the things that my ensemble has often faced is I'll be like, let's just try it. And they say, nahi ho sakta, nahi ho sakta. And I say, but aap koshish to kariye, sun ke batayenge. We'll decide after we hear it if it's sounding right. And quite often they'll be like, you're right. It actually did sound incredible. Or they then are pushed to make something better than even what I thought they could make. So collaboration is fantastic. It helps you grow, it helps you learn. As I said, the greatest lesson with collaboration is realizing that you have teachers everywhere and you don't just have to search for gurus, as an older person, a teacher.
Your favorite collaboration till now?
My favorite collaboration till now, it's really hard, to say. It's like asking me to choose a favorite child. I would say one of my favorites right now is the one that I have done with the Iranian visual artist Faizi
Oh,
and Gopika Chawla,
that
because
is good. Yeah.
the animation of this video is so nuanced that we had a huge language barrier, right? So it's written in Punjabi. She speaks English, that too, in a sort of slightly broken way. So I had to translate everything. I wrote in Punjabi for the first time. I had to translate everything. I had to tell her which image I wanted, to represent which word. And then she just so beautifully executed it. And that to me it's been such a huge achievement for me personally, that it does feel like a favorite collaboration, because it feels like when you really want to and when you really understand each other just through the music or the essence of it, you can actually create something. And it doesn't matter where you are, what language you speak, it doesn't matter what time zone you're in, it doesn't matter anything, your ethnicity or religious beliefs, you can still come together. And music has the power to do that.
That's good. Yeah, you're right. So you have often, you have performed across the world, from India to Europe to US. Did you ever experience a moment on stage abroad when you felt the audience truly got the Sufi, gospel project, and in a very unexpected way?
I have to say, I did really feel that. I felt it many times, but one of the places that felt absolutely incredible was when I performed at the Sydney Opera House.
Oh,
And we had, I mean, I think our standing ovation lasted close to 10 minutes. And this was when we did it in Sydney. And then a few weeks later, we were in Australia for 3 weeks, I think. And so after Sydney, we did Melbourne. We went to a few other places after that. And our last stop was Canberra. And in Canberra, I looked at the audience and I saw so many familiar faces. And post the performance, I realized that the people who'd heard us in Sydney 3 weeks later had driven down to Canberra to hear us again. And that's when, I mean, I was so moved by the fact they said, we just knew you were here for just 3 weeks and we wanted to hear you again because we love what you're saying through the Sufi Gospel Project. We love the music. And that was so, so special for me. So, yeah,
yeah.
that was definitely one of the times I felt it really resonated with the audience.
That's great. So Sonam, as an independent artist, do you, follow any social media trends, to market your music? Because you're an, independent artist and you have a platform, social media as a platform. How do you use it?
So my social media is not great, I have to admit. I don't follow trends. I think I'll never follow trends. That's just who I am as a person. I have become a little better at social media in terms of, trying to put some of my music out there, and I'm hoping to get there slowly. I am in many ways a private person, so it's been a bit of a tussle to say, shall I put it out there? But I am understanding slowly the value of social media. Perhaps late to the party, but I'm getting there. I do use my social media, however, have used it from the very advent to talk about issues that, I believe in, social issues. So I do, when there was this whole thing about the relocation of the dogs, I think I was the most active on social media than I've ever been, because that was something that was really important to me. So I was amplifying that message a lot. And I did that through music. I did it by speaking out. I still feel, about sharing my music. I'll post my music once or twice. And I feel like, I feel a bit shy almost to put it out there and try and say that it's amazing. I want people to listen to it and decide whether they like it or not. But for things I feel really strongly about, like social issues, women's rights, those ones you'll hear me loudly. But since you've asked me this question, I am going to make an effort to definitely put my music out there more.
Definitely, definitely. You should definitely, because it's quite trendy.
Yes, I will. I need someone like you to push me to do this.
So, Sonam, looking ahead, what kind of, legacy do you hope for Sufi Gospel Project will leave, not just in terms of music, but in terms of dialogue, healing, and, cultural memory?
So, Ojasvi, the legacy I hope all my music will leave behind, not just the Sufi Gospel Project. I have another few IPs. I have a Kabir Project IP. I have another IP called Ibadat, which I sing the poetry of well-known and lesser-known Sufi mystics. And I have, of course, this project on partition. So I hope all those IPs, all that music, and the music I continue to create does leave a legacy of inclusion, of equality, of healing, of helping people understand that really, again, that each of us has our own truths, but each truth is just as valid, of being inclusive, not just in terms of tolerance, but in terms of acceptance, of allowing people to be, and and letting them be whoever they are, and accepting them in a way that's valid, and accepting them with love. And I hope that, I know that's a big ask for music, but I really do hope that through this constant push that I do with my music, the lyrics that I'm careful to write or choose, I'm able to create this kind of legacy of love, of the religion of humanity being the greatest religion of them all.
So, tell me about these IPs, now, the Ibadat and the
So
Kabir.
Ibadat is,
Someone, who blends poetry and music. Do you see yourself as a singer, a seeker, or a storyteller? Or do you, or do these roles constantly shift for you?
I think you're absolutely right. I see myself as all of them: a singer, a seeker, and a storyteller. I think you have to be a seeker in order to tell stories, because then you seek, you learn stories, and you tell those stories. And I'm a storyteller through my music. So I'm a
Yeah.
seeker, storyteller, singer. And I think that you've really put it across very beautifully, even though I don't like labels, but this is absolutely correct. But the fact is, so all of this is important for me in order to share what I feel, share my truth, and those all the pieces of music. So the Ibadat project. Now Ibadat, I decided to take the poetry of, like I said, well-known Sufi poets as well as lesser-known Sufi poets. So even if I took a piece, I have taken a piece like Eri Sakhi by Amir Khusro. Now everyone has heard it. Eri Sakhi More Piya Ghar Aaye. Everyone knows this. Everyone loves this poetry. Everyone loves the standard composition. But I think not many people know, and here is where I did the deep dive and I talked to audiences about this. Not many people know that when Sufi poets wrote, even male Sufi poets wrote, they donned the feminine form in order to write. And they did this because they believed it was only a woman's heart that was capable of such deep surrender, of their heart expanding to feel this kind of love. So they really believed they had to write as women. Baba Bulle Shah, in fact, took it to another level. Baba Bulle Shah used to dress as a woman. He was very sort of fluid about this. He would dress in a ghagra, wear ankle bells, and go out and sing and dance when he sang, Tere Ishq Nachaya, or wrote Tere Ishq Nachaya. These are the sort of things. There were no norms. They didn't feel embarrassed by the norms of society. Amir Khusro, when he writes, he says, "Eri sakhi more piya ghar aaye." He says, "मैं तो खड़ी थी आस लगाए, मेहंदी कजरा मांग सजाए." So he said, I was standing as the bride. I was standing as a woman, adorning herself with beautiful shringar, And she says, when dekh suratiya apne piya ki haar gayi main tan man ko. He says, as the woman, that when I saw the face of my beloved, I gave of myself. And again, for me, I didn't just read between the lines. I think I read with a fine tooth comb between the lines, because the kind of woman he talked of when he says, Har gayi main tan man ko, he could have just written, Har gayi main man ko. But he said, I gave of myself mind, body, and soul. So, not as a shy woman, not as a woman who was worried about what society would say. I gave of myself, my physical body in love. Giving of the physical body in love is a huge form of surrender. It's a huge act of surrender. So, he didn't write about a shy woman who said, Oh, I love you from my heart, but I'm going to be behind a ghungat. He didn't say that. He said, I gave of myself wholly, unabashedly, uninhibited. That's what he wrote of that kind of woman. So that's the kind of deep surrender that these male Sufi poets believed only women could do. And so that's the kind of stuff I do when I do the Ibadat project. I try and deep dive into the lyrics. I try and find more of what the person, the poet, could have been thinking of when they were writing this poetry. And for me, that's a personal exercise. It's a personal interpretation. But I do believe that it nuances the poetry and adds much more layer and richness to it. And therefore, when you listen to it, then you're listening from a different perspective. And it touches you in a way that's different, perhaps, to you listening to it just as a song. So there's that. The Kabir project is a bunch of Kabir. I've taken Kabir poetry, which I've, again, done interesting things with, things I've imagined. So one of the pieces is called Kabir Te Bulna Diya Galla. Now, Kabir Das and Bulle Shah didn't exist at the same time, right? They were in different times. But I have created a piece where this is an imagined conversation between Kabir Das and Bulle Shah. And I've imagined this conversation because what they were saying was very similar. As I said to you, across time, across region. But I felt that what if they had met? What would they have had to say? So there are pieces like this. So each of these projects, again, is based on a larger umbrella brand of spirituality, love, inclusion, and the legacy of humanity and love.
So, Sonam, as an independent artist, sometimes it gets tough without labels.
Yeah, it does. Of course, it does, because I am my own karta dharta in many ways. You produce your own music, you put it out there, you hope people will listen to it. Um, all the performances that come to you come literally through word of mouth. I mean, you're singing, people hear you, you get the work. But so far, I have to say, it's been amazing, and in many ways, when I am able to speak to an organizer or, say, a festival director about the music I do, I think maybe that resonates with them better as well. So I'm not sure it's necessarily a weakness. Perhaps it is what I am meant to do. I don't question it. I think it is what I am meant to do. Maybe perhaps people who are more, managers come more easily to people who are more mainstream. And because it would be hard for most people to explain the music the way I understand it, because it is what I do. So I'm actually okay with it. I don't mind. I'm one of those women who also really is one of those people who really is. I like attention to detail. So I think me handling everything is what I'm meant to do.
Superwoman.
Yeah, superwoman, I hope.
So what are the upcoming projects lined up and concerts you're performing in of them?
So there are lots of private performances actually coming up, but most of them are out of the country, which has been exciting. It's weird. There's been a bit of a interesting shift from last year. We went to the US and we did a few public performances, and that seemed to have created a bit of a roller coaster or a nice domino effect of a lot of international performances. So that's exciting. We have a performance coming up in Vietnam, which is going to be in one of the caves of Vietnam, which I'm very excited about the natural sounds coming out of that cave. we have a lot of releases coming out this year. It's stuff that I had created over the years but had sort of left unfinished because we were so busy traveling and performing. So I made a concerted effort this year to put out this music. So it's starting with Chalia Moment. There is a new track, which is a version of Imagine, which is blended with Faiz Sahab's one of his poems, which is coming out. It's another call to peace. It's another call to humanity. There is a version of Mahatma Gandhi's Vaishnav Jan coming out. So and then there's some Sufi poetry which I composed, which is coming out. So it is, hopefully, I mean, the aim is one new song every month or two. So I'm not bother you. So, but yeah, so I'm excited about the new stuff coming out, and also, it has been really special to go into the studio after so long. I think as every artist, after a while of performing, you do need to go into like this hibernative space, a quiet sanctum sanctorum, and create. And that's been really rewarding, I have to say, to come back to being able to. Oh, there's also a track that's coming out with Aditya Birla.
Oh, wow.
It's coming out in October. They do a lot of work to support the arts, so I'm doing a track with them. So that's also coming out. So you'll be hearing a lot of my voice for a while.
Oh, wow, that's great. Super. So how do you see, music industry and Sufi music in another 2, 3 years?
So it's been a very interesting change in Sufi music. I'm really, really glad you asked me this question because Sufi music, there's been good and there's been bad that's happened. So the good is that it's suddenly trending. It's really popular. Everyone is doing it. But what everyone is doing is not necessarily Sufi. Everyone is doing cover versions of Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan Saab's music. And yes, that's Sufi. And it's great in many ways. But I am concerned as to where the individuality is, number one. Number two, everyone's become a bit of a Me Too then. Literally, you'll open Instagram and you'll hear 15,000 versions of Kali Kali Zulfo. Or you'll hear 700 versions of Saason Ki Mala. And you're just, and they're beautiful pieces. They've been done.
Bismil Ki Mehfil and Sagar Ki Kawali.
Yeah,
famous guys who are, trending on Instagram.
And then there are 500,000 copies of them. There's Everyone Ki Mehfil and Everyone Ki Kawali. And the point is, I just fear that it's become so commercial that that's taken away the essence of what Sufism is. And that's the only part of it that breaks my heart. And also now, because these two guys they've been trendsetters in many ways. They add some Bollywood music into it. So now Sufi is, आप ये वाला गाना भी गा लो, वो वाला गाना भी गा लो, and it's got Bollywood in it, and you're thinking, but these are not Sufi songs, So that to me has been, I feel like that kind of bastardization of Sufism has happened. And I feel, I do hope for it to go back at some point when this trend is done and dusted. I hope that it'll go back to its more pure form. There is so much beautiful Sufi poetry that perhaps even Nusrat Sahab didn't sing. Abida ji sings some beautiful stuff. And I'm hoping all of that comes back to the front, to the fore. And I hope that this trend of noise, and some of it also, the Sufi music, it's become quite, I'm saying in the arrangement, it's become a lot of it. You can create a vajd, you can create a junoon, you can create it without it being noisy. So those would be the cons, I feel. The pro is, of course, that it's great. Everything that becomes a trend, everyone gets interested in. Indian classical music has also seen a resurgence, thanks to Bandish Bandits and thanks to a lot of Instagram, wonderfully, incredibly talented singers. So all of this is good. So I would say perhaps there's been more good because even once this trend of mehfils, slightly noisy mehfils or slightly commercial mehfils wears off, there will still be an interest, hopefully, in Indian classical music, in Sufi music. Those gates have opened. So that's been the good thing of it.
That's great. That's great. So, can you sing 2 lines of your new song?
I'm thinking of what I could sing to you. जगदी सारी फिक्रां तज के अपने मुर्शिद दे रंग सज के चलिया मोमिन मक्के. So I'm going to try and sing that for you. जगदी सारी फिक्रां तज के अपने मुर्शिद दे रंग सज के चलिया मोमिन मक्के. चलिया मोमिन चलिया चलिया मोमिन मक्के, चलिया मोमिन मक्के, चलिया मोमिन चलिया, चलिया मोमिन मक्के, चलिया मोमिन चलिया, चलिया मोमिन मक्के, मक्के, चलिया मक्के, मक्के, चलिया मक्के.
Wow, super, so soulful, very nice, love
Thank
it.
you. So I hope it was really lovely chatting with you, and thank you for doing this, honestly.
Thank you so much, Sonam, for joining us. It was our pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much, and all the best for all the releases, upcoming releases, and everything.
And thank you for asking such lovely, pertinent, and deep questions. It's really lovely to have a conversation like this.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Bye.